Hello and welcome you all. Today, we are diving into one of the most intense and strategic chapters of the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War, the battle for control over the Shulur area. This wasn't just about seizing territory, it was a high-stakes struggle where strategy, resilience, and tactical brilliance came to the forefront. From the bold captures of key towns like Pethir and Shulur to the relentless efforts to maintain control, this region became a crucial battleground. With its rugged terrain, harsh weather, and constant threats of counterattacks, every move was a calculated play on the chessboard of war. The operations here were more than just battles, they were decisive moments that shaped the conflict, showing just how vital geography and planning can be in the course of history. Let's dive into it and understand it. The 1947-48 Indo-Pak War marked the very first clash between India and Pakistan right after they became independent nations. Just months after gaining freedom, these two new nations were already at war, with the battleground being the picturesque yet highly strategic region of Jammu and Kashmir. The root of this conflict lay in a territorial dispute. Back then, princely states had the choice to join either India or Pakistan. But Jammu and Kashmir, a state with a Muslim-majority population ruled by a Hindu Maharaja, found itself caught in a complex, high-stakes dilemma. The Maharaja wanted to remain independent, but events quickly spiraled, leading to a fierce and heated conflict. One of the most crucial areas during this war was the Shulur region, a name that doesn't get talked about enough but played a pivotal role. This area witnessed some of the most intense battles because it served as a strategic gateway. Whoever controlled Shulur had the upper hand in the larger territorial game, and both sides made rapid advances, determined not to lose ground. As the world watched, the United Nations intervened, calling for a ceasefire. They managed to stop the open conflict, but the compromise wasn't perfect. A new line was drawn, the line of control, splitting Indian-administered Kashmir from Pakistan-administered Kashmir. This brought an end to the immediate fighting but left behind an unresolved issue that continues to simmer even today. This story isn't just about a past conflict, it's about understanding how even small, seemingly remote regions like Shulur can become the focal point of a larger geopolitical struggle. The war set the stage for a long-standing rivalry that has shaped the entire region for decades, highlighting how strategic decisions in critical moments can have far-reaching impacts on the world we live in today. The Shulur region, ever heard of it? Well, during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War, this was the place that everyone had their eyes on. Why? Because it wasn't just another patch of land, it was a key strategic location that could make or break military operations. Nestled along what would later be known as the Line of Control, Shulur controlled access to vital supply routes. Whoever had control here wasn't just holding ground, they were controlling the flow of resources, troops, and strategy. This is what made it such a prized possession, a place that both India and Pakistan were desperate to secure. And let's not forget, this was no ordinary war zone. The region sat right in the heart of the bigger Kashmir conflict, a battle that was, and still is, a matter of national pride, strategy, and identity for both countries. Shulur was like the pressure point in this whole affair. Gain control here, and you had an upper hand in the larger chessboard of Jammu and Kashmir. Both sides knew it, and both sides wanted it. Now, let's talk about the terrain. This wasn't a flat field where you could just roll in tanks and troops. Oh no! We are talking rugged, mountainous, and downright treacherous. The kind of place where every step forward felt like a small victory, and every inch gained could cost lives. Steep slopes, narrow passes, and unpredictable weather made it a battlefield where strategy wasn't just about numbers but about navigating through sheer, unforgiving nature. So, when you hear about the battles in Shulur know this, it was more than just a fight for land. It was a high-stakes game of control, a contest to dominate the region's lifelines, and a symbol of the larger struggle over Jammu and Kashmir. Both India and Pakistan put everything on the line here because the stakes were that high. And even today, the story of Shulur serves as a reminder of just how crucial strategic locations can be in the bigger picture of geopolitics. Let's get straight to it. The strategic importance of the Shulur region during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War was immense. Imagine a place that gave you a bird's-eye view of everything around it. That's what Shulur offered, commanding views of the surrounding landscape. And in a war, that's pure gold. With this vantage point, both India and Pakistan could effectively monitor enemy movements, control vital supply routes, and plan their next moves. Holding this position wasn't just about defending a patch of land, it was about dominating the entire theater of operations. But it wasn't just about surveillance. The Shulur region was crucial for troop movements and supply lines. If you controlled this area, you could maneuver your forces and supplies with ease, ensuring that reinforcements and resources reached where they were needed most. For both India and Pakistan, this was a game-changer. Losing control here meant losing the ability to effectively manage the larger conflict in the region, which is why both sides fought tooth and nail to dominate this battleground. Now, let's talk about the terrain: rugged, mountainous, and unforgiving. For the soldiers on the ground, this was a nightmare. But for the defenders, it was a blessing. The difficult terrain naturally favored those in defensive positions. Steep slopes, narrow passes, and rough pathways meant that advancing troops had to fight against both the enemy and the elements. This made Shulur a fortress of sorts, where holding your ground was easier than pushing forward. Both India and Pakistan knew that controlling these high grounds meant having the upper hand, which is why it became one of the most fiercely contested areas during the war. So, when we talk about the Shulur region, we are not just talking about a piece of land, we are talking about a strategic stronghold that was key to controlling the entire conflict. It's a reminder that in war, geography can often decide the outcome, and in this case, Shulur was the ultimate prize. Let's set the scene: the initial deployment of forces in the Shulur area during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War. This was a high-stakes game of positioning, where every move was about gaining an edge over the opponent. First, we will talk about Indian forces. From the outset, India knew the importance of controlling key vantage points and supply routes in the Shulur region. So, Indian troops were strategically deployed to secure these critical locations. The plan was simple but effective: dominate the high ground, monitor the enemy, and ensure smooth supply lines. By taking control of these key positions, Indian forces aimed to make it difficult for Pakistani troops to advance, turning Shulur into a defensive stronghold. Moving next to Pakistani forces, on the other side, Pakistan wasn't about to sit back and let this happen. They quickly deployed their own forces to counter the Indian presence, moving into the Shulur area to establish strong defensive positions. For Pakistan, it was all about pushing back and denying India the strategic advantage. They knew that holding on to this region was essential, and they were ready to meet the Indian forces head-on to secure it. Lastly, we will talk about military equipment. Both sides knew this wasn't just about manpower, it was about firepower. India and Pakistan allocated heavy artillery, armored vehicles, and other military equipment to bolster their forces in the Shulur area. Artillery positions were set up to provide cover and support, while armored vehicles were used to navigate the rugged terrain and reinforce defensive positions. It was a full-scale military build-up, and both sides were preparing for a long, tough fight. So, what did this initial deployment tell us? It was clear that both India and Pakistan understood the strategic significance of Shulur. It wasn't just about controlling a region, it was about gaining the upper hand in the larger conflict over Jammu and Kashmir. The battle lines were drawn, the forces were in place, and the stage was set for an intense and prolonged struggle. The early days of the battle for Shulur during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War were nothing short of a high-stakes struggle against nature itself. This wasn't just a clash between two armies, it was a battle where the terrain, the weather, and sheer willpower played as big a role as the soldiers on the ground. Imagine trying to fight a war on steep, rugged mountains where every step feels like climbing a wall. That's what both Indian and Pakistani troops faced in Shulur. This wasn't your typical battlefield, no flat plains where tanks could easily roll in. The terrain was unforgiving, full of steep slopes, narrow passes, and rocky trails that made every move a challenge. Both sides had to get creative, using specialized tactics and equipment just to navigate this tough landscape. Here, every inch gained was a small victory, and every step could mean risking it all. The terrain itself felt like an enemy, forcing both sides to adapt quickly and stay on their toes. And as if the rocky paths weren't enough, the weather was even more brutal. The high-altitude climate of Shulur Sonamul brought freezing temperatures, blizzards, and winds that could cut right through you. Imagine trying to hold your position, all while braving heavy snowfall and bone-chilling cold. For the troops, it wasn't just a fight for territory, it was a fight for survival. The cold was as much of a threat as the bullets, and every day was a struggle against frostbite, exhaustion, and the harsh elements. Maintaining morale under such conditions was no small feat, yet both sides pushed on, refusing to give up ground. And then there was the struggle to keep the supply lines open. Shulur Sonamul was remote, really remote. Forget well-paved roads or easy transport routes. Supplies had to be moved across snow-covered, mountainous paths, all while dodging enemy fire. For both India and Pakistan, keeping those supply lines running was like lifeblood. Without them, troops couldn't hold their positions, and carefully laid strategies could crumble. Imagine every supply run turning into a mission where failure wasn't an option. These early engagements in Shulur Sonamul weren't just about skirmishes, they were about resilience, adaptability, and sheer willpower. It was a battle against the odds, where every victory was hard-earned, and the environment was as much of an adversary as the enemy. The struggle for Shulur Sonamul shows us just how tough things can get on the front lines, where every day is a test of endurance and resolve, and where success depends not just on strength, but on the courage to keep going, no matter how harsh the conditions. Let's talk about one of the most daring moves of the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War, the capture of Pethir. This wasn't just about taking control of a town, this was a high-stakes operation aimed at cutting off enemy supply lines and securing a key piece of the battlefield puzzle. Pethir was strategically vital, almost like the glue holding the enemy's defenses together. Both sides knew that whoever seized it would gain a serious upper hand, and that's why this operation became a turning point in the conflict. The offensive to capture Pethir was nothing short of a masterclass in tactical maneuvers. This wasn't a simple head-on charge, it was a carefully coordinated assault, with infantry, artillery, and armored units all playing their parts. First, the infantry moved in, engaging the defenders head-on, keeping them busy and guessing. Meanwhile, the artillery unleashed a barrage of firepower, pounding enemy positions, softening them up, and creating chaos. And then, like a perfectly timed punch, the armored units rolled in, powerful, unstoppable, and ready to break through whatever resistance was left. It was a symphony of strategy, where every move was precise, deliberate, and designed to outsmart and overwhelm the defenders. And the result? A resounding success. Pethir fell, and with it, the enemy's grip on the region weakened. The capture of this strategic town wasn't just a tactical win, it was a game-changer. Securing Pethir allowed the forces to cut off vital supply routes, disrupt enemy logistics, and gain a strategic foothold that shifted the balance of power. It was a bold, decisive move that consolidated their position and set the stage for further advances. In the end, the operation showed just how crucial a well-executed plan can be in turning the tide of a high-stakes conflict. The battle for Pethir wasn't just about winning territory, it was about seizing the advantage, and it proved that with the right strategy, even the most fortified positions can be taken. Let's talk about another bold and strategic move during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War, the capture of Shulur. This wasn't just any town, it was a strategic gem, and taking control of it meant gaining a crucial advantage in the region. Both sides knew this, and that's what made this operation so intense. The Indian forces launched a well-coordinated, multi-pronged assault designed to overwhelm the enemy defenses from multiple directions. This wasn't just about brute force, it was about strategy, precision, and catching the opponent off guard. The key to this operation? Leveraging the terrain. Shulur was nestled in the mountains, and while that might sound like a challenge, it was actually an opportunity. The Indian forces used the rugged, mountainous landscape to their advantage, outmaneuvering and isolating the Pakistani troops. They knew the terrain, they knew the pathways, and they used that knowledge to disrupt enemy supply lines and cut off communications. It was a classic case of using the environment to dictate the battle, turning the mountains into an ally rather than a barrier. And the outcome? A decisive victory. The capture of Shulur wasn't just a tactical win, it was a statement. Securing this strategic town allowed Indian forces to consolidate their position, gain a strong foothold, and set the stage for further advances. It disrupted the enemy's plans, weakened their hold on the region, and shifted the balance of power. The victory at Shulur was a clear example of how strategy, coordination, and the smart use of terrain can turn the tide of a conflict. It wasn't just about capturing a town, it was about seizing control of the region and setting the stage for future successes. Let's dive into the sustained operations that followed the crucial battles for control over Shulur during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War. Winning a town is one thing, but holding on to it? That's a whole new challenge. For the forces on the ground, maintaining control over the Shulur area was absolutely vital. Why? Because this region wasn't just a dot on the map, it was the gateway to key supply routes. Securing it meant ensuring a steady flow of resources and, more importantly, denying the adversary any chance of regaining access to this strategic lifeline. The stakes were high, and both sides knew it. But holding Shulur wasn't just about setting up camp and staying put. The forces had to be ready for anything, especially counterattacks. After all, no one gives up a strategic position without a fight, and the adversary was bound to strike back. That meant troops had to be on high alert, ready to respond swiftly and decisively to any attempt to retake the region. It was a game of endurance and vigilance, where even a moment's lapse could cost them everything they had fought so hard to secure. And let's not forget, this wasn't just about military might, it was about securing the region and ensuring safety. Establishing a strong security presence in Shulur was essential, not just for the strategic assets but for the local population too. The forces had to build trust, protect the residents, and stabilize the area to ensure that no hostile elements could disrupt the fragile balance. Holding on to Shulur was about more than just tactical advantage, it was about creating a secure environment where strategic plans could unfold without constant threats. In the end, sustained operations in Shulur were a test of resilience, strategy, and vigilance. It wasn't just a matter of winning a battle, it was about maintaining control, responding to threats, and ensuring security across the region. This was a complex and ongoing effort, where every day on the ground was a fight to hold on to hard-won gains and keep the momentum going in a high-stakes game of strategy. Let's talk strategy. One of the smartest moves in the Shulur operations during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War was the division of sectors. Now, this wasn't just about putting troops on the ground and hoping for the best. It was a meticulously planned approach to bring order to a chaotic, high-stakes battlefield. The Shulur area was divided into distinct sectors, each carefully mapped out to ensure precise deployment and control. Why? Because sectorization meant you could concentrate your forces exactly where they were needed most. Instead of stretching troops thin across a vast, unpredictable terrain, both India and Pakistan could focus their strength on key locations, turning critical points into fortified strongholds. This wasn't just tactical, it was brilliant. Think of it as turning a chaotic battlefield into a chessboard, where every piece was perfectly positioned to strike or defend at a moment's notice. But the real beauty of this strategy was how it enhanced coordination and communication. Dividing the area into sectors allowed different military units to move and operate as a cohesive team. Imagine trying to manage a large-scale operation across rugged mountains without clear communication, it would be pure chaos. But with sectors, each unit knew its role, and commanders could orchestrate their moves like a conductor leading an orchestra. Every maneuver was precise, every response was swift, and every strategy was seamlessly executed. In the end, the division of sectors turned out to be a game-changer. It wasn't just about dividing a region, it was about maximizing control, enhancing strategic positioning, and ensuring that every move on this high-stakes battlefield was calculated and effective. It gave the forces the edge they needed, allowing them to respond quickly, concentrate their power, and maintain a level of coordination that could mean the difference between victory and defeat. This is how strategy and smart planning turned the tide, even in one of the most rugged and challenging regions of the conflict. Let's talk about a crucial phase in the Shulur operations during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War, relieving pressure on Shulur. After capturing this strategic town, it became clear that holding onto it was going to be just as challenging as taking it. The stakes were high, and the Indian forces needed to strengthen their position to fend off any counterattacks. That's when they made a decisive move: reinforcements. Additional troops and equipment were deployed to bolster the Indian presence in the Shulur area, transforming it into a defensive stronghold. It wasn't just about numbers, it was about sending a message: Shulur wasn't going to be easy to take back. But defense was only part of the strategy. To truly secure Shulur, Indian forces needed to play offense. They launched a series of strategic maneuvers, coordinating infantry, artillery, and armored units in a well-orchestrated assault. The goal was clear: outmaneuver and overwhelm the Pakistani forces, pushing them back and solidifying control over the region. This wasn't just about holding the line, it was about expanding it, using precise, calculated strikes to keep the adversary on the back foot. Each move was designed to disrupt, disorient, and dominate, ensuring that the momentum stayed firmly in India's favor. And then, there was the critical task of securing supply routes and communication lines. Holding Shulur would mean nothing if the town was isolated, so establishing a strong security presence across the Shulur area was essential. Troops worked tirelessly to safeguard vital supply routes, ensuring that resources, reinforcements, and communication could flow smoothly and reliably. This denied the adversary any chance of cutting off supplies or launching surprise assaults. By securing these lifelines, Indian forces not only maintained their grip on Shulur but also ensured that their foothold in the region was unshakable. In the end, the efforts to relieve pressure on Shulur were about more than just defense, they were about dominance. Reinforcing the town, launching coordinated assaults, and securing supply lines created a network of strength that was tough to break. It showed that strategy isn't just about winning battles, it's about thinking ahead, shoring up defenses, and making sure that once you have a critical position, you never let it slip. This combination of offense, defense, and strategic foresight was what allowed Indian forces to turn Shulur into a formidable stronghold, securing not just a town, but a crucial advantage in the wider conflict. In conclusion, the operations in the Shulur area during the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War were a decisive chapter that showcased the importance of strategy, resilience, and tactical precision. The successful capture of strategic towns like Pethir and Shulur marked a turning point, allowing Indian forces to consolidate their position and secure vital supply routes. These victories weren't just about controlling towns, they were about gaining a tactical edge, establishing dominance, and ensuring a steady flow of resources. By holding these key locations, Indian forces carved out a strong foothold in the Shulur area, which was essential to maintaining the upper hand. But capturing these towns was only half the battle. Maintaining control over the region was an ongoing effort, one that required constant vigilance and strategic foresight. Establishing a strong security presence and being prepared to respond swiftly to any counterattacks were crucial in keeping the adversary at bay. This wasn't just about defending a position, it was about denying the adversary any chance to regroup and reclaim lost ground, ensuring long-term stability in a region that was vital to the broader conflict. The significance of these operations cannot be overstated. Controlling the Shulur area was more than a military achievement, it had far-reaching geopolitical implications. This strategic location played a key role in the larger conflict, influencing the flow of the war and shaping the dynamics on the ground. It was a testament to how critical geography, supply lines, and tactical planning can be in the outcome of a conflict. The operations in Shulur Sonamul weren't just battles, they were decisive moves on the geopolitical chessboard, setting the stage for future strategies and defining a crucial moment in the 1947-48 Indo-Pak War. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more deep dives into history, strategy, and the stories that shaped the world.